Hi, everybody, and welcome to episode 5 of the Aviation Lowdown. I'm your host, LO. Last week we had Steve-O-One Knievel with us, the pilot very, very popular on the YouTube aviation community. Today we have pilot Emily, and she's pretty popular on Instagram. So, Emily, thanks for joining us today on the Aviation Lowdown.
Hi, thank you. Thanks for having me.
No problem. One of the things I noticed immediately with your page was that it had a lot of followers that it seemed to be very loyal to your posts.
Yeah, I guess it's kind of building up there without me realizing.
It's building. I spoke with, I don't know if you heard the Steve-O-One Knievel interview from last week.
Yeah, I did.
Now, were you familiar with Steve-O, or is that the first time you heard of him?
No, so I actually, when you mentioned you and I were going to sit down together, I did kind of listen into the other one, and it was really cool to be able to see his YouTube following. So a little bit inspiring for me too, as well.
Yeah, he's a really, really big YouTube follower. Did you ever watch any of his videos?
Not until I just listened to his podcast with you. So
Yeah.
A little bit exciting to kind of go browse through his stuff for
So
sure.
it kind of worked out for him. So Steve-O, if you're listening to this, good job, man. You got another fan out there. So
Exactly.
If I did one thing in that episode, it was to get some more fans. But
inspire someone else.
yeah, but I learned so much from that, and it was really, really mind opening to sit on the other end of that. And he just pours his heart out with his stories involving the FAA and everything. And wow.
Exactly. Yeah. Nerve-wracking for sure.
A little bit about you. You're a pilot, and where are you from?
Yes.
What's your story? How did you become a pilot? What's the background story on Emily?
Yeah, for sure. So I'm from Toronto originally and started my aviation career, I guess you could say, back in 2010, but it was actually my second career. So originally I went to the university and then finished up a diploma program, and I became a massage therapist. So that was my first venture into my first industry, I guess you could say.
Mhm.
And I was doing that for full time for about 2 years. And after 2 years, I knew I loved it. I loved being a massage therapist. But I knew I wanted to do something more. I wanted to travel the world, and eventually aviation kind of stumbled as a possible next step. My dad kind of randomly mentioned it to me, and I went and I did an intro flight, and I was like, yeah, this is it. I'm hooked right from the get-go. But I had never considered it before that. I always enjoyed flying. I always enjoyed going to the airport, traveling. My parents used to always bring me back a shit ton of postcards when they would travel, and I was like, wow, that's wicked. I would definitely want to explore, but I never thought about myself being a pilot until I did that intro flight, and I was like, all right, cool. Heck yeah, I'm doing this.
That's really cool. Now, you mentioned your dad.
Yeah.
Was he a pilot? He's not a pilot, right? He just suggested it?
So yeah, there's no one in my family that's in aviation, in any respect. So no pilots, no mechanics, dispatchers, nothing. So I was the first one to kind of venture into this.
Wow.
So a little bit intimidating for sure at the beginning, but you pick up some really good mentors along the way. So
Right.
I kept doing my massage therapy on the side, and I kept doing it for, I just quit officially actually last year. So I've been doing it for 10 years, but I was still doing it on the side as I became a pilot and as I started working in the industry. But I knew, my heart was way more into this. So really glad I kept it up. So yeah, that's where I'm at now.
Congratulations on that. That's a real success story. Somebody who saw a goal and they committed to it and they made it happen.
Yeah.
So I'm really proud of you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Good job, Emily.
Thank you.
And it's quite the contrast to Steve from last week. And I wouldn't say it's totally different, but Steve explained how he had the GI Bill available and he was trying to figure out what he should do from sort of a beginning stage. And you were in a situation where you were actually doing a career, something that you were trained in, and decided you had a change of heart. You wanted to get involved in something different. And can you kind of describe to the listeners the feeling of anxiety of not really knowing what you want to do? I'm sure you had those moments during that time where you're like,
Oh my gosh.
should I continue with this? There's a lot of sunk costs, with that, with staying with something and not being sure if it's really worth it.
Absolutely. Yeah, you raise a really good point. And it's true, because taking yourself through, one set or a one round of college or university is one thing, and then taking yourself through a second round is another. So yeah, absolutely dealing with that anxiety of not knowing what's next and not knowing what steps to take and being overwhelmed by the entirety of the process, and not being able to see the finish line, right? You kind of see the overall end goal, but you have no idea what the path is going to look like, how you're going to get there. And I think the best thing that a lot of my mentors used to tell me is just, focusing on the small steps. So breaking it down. And anybody who tells you, you yourself, having gone through your fitness goals and all that, yourself too, that it's, there's the one end goal, but then breaking it down into smaller steps kind of makes it a little bit
Sure.
easier to swallow,
Hmm.
get through to that next thing. And before you know it, like the time passes by, right? Like before you realize it, every step that you take towards that goal kind of gets you there. And do I still have, doubts as to where the industry is going to take me? Absolutely. But as long as I feel like, as long as I'm happy and I have the lifestyle that I'm looking forward to, and I feel, some kind of reward from what I'm doing, I feel like, well, at least I'm on the right track, right? So that's what keeps me motivated.
I question my life every time I spend 12 hours a day making memes, so I you can probably use that too. But it reminds me of the song 46 and 2 by Tool, which talks about this thing called the Jungian shadow in psychology, which is about embracing everything in your life, the good and the bad, the negative, the positive, and knowing yourself and some of those the angsty feelings. What kind of advice can you give to people listening who maybe would like to get involved in aviation, but they're not confident enough to go forward with it? They don't know if it's the right move.
Yeah, that's a really good question. And I think looking back on my own progress and kind of like my challenges and my ups and downs, it's definitely just to keep at it, right? Like the only true failure in my mind is if you kind of get knocked down and you don't get back up. So even if you screw up, like I've screwed up on flight tests before, I screwed up on rides, we all have our challenges, but every single time that you get back up and you try again, that to me is success. Mm-hmm. So I think that would be the best thing to go back as advice is it doesn't matter how many times you quote unquote screw up or you mess up or whatever, as long as you get back up, certain times it's going to take you a day, other times it'll take you a couple months or whatever the case may be, just get back up and keep going.
You should be a motivational speaker. I feel like you'd be really good. Speaking of which, if you got back up, what kind of plane would you be flying? I meant to ask you this, but what kind of planes are you flying these days, by the way?
Yeah, so I'm currently type rated, so I'm flying the Dash 8Q 400.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, regional flying. So lots of kind of shorter hops back and forth around Canada. So I was originally based out east in Toronto. So I was doing a lot of eastern flying, going all the way to the east coast of Canada. Now based in Calgary, which is super close to the west coast, like the mountain range that we have out here. Mm-hmm. So I'm flying more so across to like Vancouver, all the way up to Yellowknife, all the way across the prairies, Manitoba, and all that. Yeah.
Wow, that's really kind of cool. Now, I have a dumb question I just thought of, but do you fly to the U.S. at all?
No, so we don't.
It's international, right?
Yeah, exactly. So in out east, we had two routes that took us to. One of them was Boston, and another one was Nashville for our U.S. destinations. Mm-hmm. Out west, we don't have any U.S. flying just yet, but we actually just announced that we're going to be flying into Portland. In the West Coast. So that's pretty exciting because I've never been there before. So that'll be a cool new excitement. Yeah.
For sure. I've never been to Portland either, but everyone who goes there has told me it's amazing and they'll never want to leave. So we'll have to meet up for a drink or something in Portland, but you'll have to fly me there, get some free miles on your airline or whatnot. But one of the things I'm sort of doing is going through your Instagram, and you've talked a little bit about the background as to how you got into flying. How did you start this huge Instagram following? What was the calling for that?
Oh my gosh, it's so so I think I've had my account for probably like 6 years or something, but I never put that much effort into it. It was just kind of documenting like my journey, so to speak. But I really started to get more traction, I guess, when I guess it was like last year, and I was the year before that. Sorry, so 2 years ago, back in 2017, I had gone out and I was flying a little bit in Africa, so with a different company. And I was based and flying in and out of the Congo and the DRC. And I guess because at that point I was just like flying a different aircraft, I was obviously type rated on still the Dash 8, but smaller version of it. And I guess just like people kind of like just gravitate towards that. So like you're no longer just like a general aviation pilot. Right. You've progressed onto like the more professional side of things. And I guess my adventure was something that people hadn't really seen before. So it just started to pick up traction. And then from there, I was like, okay, I'm going to try to make something from this. And before I know it, now I'm like over 30,000. I don't even know what that means,
but it means you're doing something right, girl.
Yeah.
No. You think we're doing well until you see some of these messages we get in our DMs. Believe me, you would not want to run this page if you saw them. You're like, oh, that's really great. And so, did you really just send that to me? Like, you know exactly. What I mean? By the way, I'm just thinking about it, but I talked to Steve-O last week, as I mentioned, and he said, he was explaining the FAA regulations here.
Yes.
With respect to recording in the cockpit and the flight deck. What is it like in Canada? Do you guys have more relaxed regulations with that?
Yeah, so there's some similarities. It was a little bit challenging to kind of pick up because you guys have obviously like the different names for the different regulations as well.
Right.
But for my operator specifically, it's, we keep it to like a sterile cockpit, kind of below 10,000
Sure.
feet. So,
Right.
and that just goes for like your seatbelts and like in anything that's not pertaining to the safety of the flight. Obviously, your focus is not going to be, set on that. But as far as like filming in the cockpit and everything like that, like a lot of us will have like mounted cameras or mounted GoPros or anything, and yeah, there's no regulation against that, so to speak. Actually,
Hmm.
I got in touch with my social media side of my operator, my company, just to make sure that I wasn't going to do anything that was going to, offend them or
Sure.
put them in a bad light or anything. They're actually super pumped about it, so we're hoping to collaborate together. So
Hmm.
yeah, as long as I keep safety as the priority, I think that's the main focus
Yeah,
there.
that's really kind of cool. And that's a big point for this podcast. I think just mentioning some of the regulations, because Steve-O mentioned specifically Part 121, which is like our airline regulations. I mean, there's a bunch of that.
Right.
But, basically he came to the agreement with these people who said, you really can't do that with passengers. And then you guys checked and they said it was fine. So it's quite the difference, and I think that's really interesting to mention. I've never seen that mentioned
Yeah.
anywhere else, but I've always noticed that the guys in Europe and gals in Europe had a lot of more airline pilots that were recording themselves. And that was what made me curious about it. So,
Yeah, absolutely. And it's good to check. It's you don't want to, do something not only to like incriminate yourself, but also just to jeopardize safety. And I think it's good actually that I was listening to you and Steve-O talk about it, because I was like, okay, yeah, I'm just gonna make sure that I'm also kind of covering my bases as well. So
you
yeah,
listen to it and like you immediately called up your airline. You're like, yo, I've been doing this for 3 years. Like, please
let me
don't
know.
judge me. But hey, by the way, did you have any scary moments of flight? I'm sure everyone in their career has had their own moments, like Steve explained. I'm curious if maybe you have a few of those hairy moments.
I've been super lucky. It's I was kind of thinking like lucky, that's a good way because I don't really have any crappy stories, but I'm trying to think. I mean, the sketchiest stuff was probably when I was flying in Africa for a little bit, just in the sense that it's just a little bit less regulated down there. And I'm not trying to
Yeah, just a little bit. That's absolutely incredible, Africa. I know nothing about flying over there.
yeah.
What were you doing over there in Africa?
Yeah, so it was I was hired out by a company that was doing UN contract work. Like so basically we're tasked to fly UN soldiers around for that specific mission. And like UN soldiers and UN personnel. So we were flying them like in and out of their base camps or in and out of their locations where they were. And I'm kind of talking about, I obviously don't want to spread like a negative view of the flying that was down there, but there's just less regulations, right? So it's uncontrolled airspace, it's non-radar airspace
Right.
in certain areas. So you've got to make your reporting, and like you're reporting your position kind of like back in the old way of doing it when you're doing your flight training, where you're like announcing to everybody in the surrounding area where you are. But unfortunately, not everybody has the same airmanship mentality. So that's what really makes it challenging. So, you might be reporting at one spot and another aircraft, from a different country or wherever they're coming from might also be reporting in that spot, but you're clearly visual and you can't see them anywhere. So, that there's like a little bit of misleading kind of going on. So I'd say the combination of that plus the weather systems that you get down
Oh,
there,
yeah.
a lot of the weather systems that we get in kind of North America and South America, they're frontal type. So you'll kind of see them moving in a line and you can kind of predict their movement and you can kind of use that to avoid them. Whereas when you're close to the equator, a lot of it is very pop-up
Right.
type of weather.
Right.
So you can't predict it and you can't tell how it's going to move. So once you're in cloud or once you're in IMC, super, super challenging to
sure.
know where the heck you should go, and you want to get the hell out of there as soon as possible. So I'd say that's probably some of the sketchiest stuff that's happened, just because on certain occasions, you can't get out of that cloud and you have to kind of go into cloud and to try to get out of it a little bit sooner. So I'd say that's one of the challenging
For
stuff,
sure.
for sure.
And it definitely makes you a better pilot, better airman or airwoman, if you will. And I think one of the things that people don't really realize is like every time you have that unique experience, it's making you a better pilot and it's training. It's actually training you to be better. And I talk to these people all the time who have so many interesting experiences that was the most terrifying moment of their career. But yet they always say, I always think about that, but it's helped me in the long run. It's helped me in the long haul.
Absolutely.
Now,
Absolutely.
shifting gears a little bit, you're really into fitness too. And
It's big time.
Yeah, no, and I'm into fitness too. I work out like 4 or 5 times a week, and I certainly saw how into fitness you are after stalking your profile for like 3 hours one day. No, I'm kidding. But one of the things I was just kind of curious about is like how people travel and do this because it affects everything having to do with health. You know, like your meal preps and how you work out and your sleep schedule and you're just traveling and fatigue and stress. It just seems like everything that would be against fitness happens in traveling. How do you handle it? How do you do that?
Okay, so to perfectly honest, to get on the same page as you, when I was first getting into the airlines, so like getting into the airlines wasn't necessarily like my end goal originally. I was like, okay, I'll give it a shot to see if I like it.
Right.
But one of my legit questions to ask my friends who were all in the industry, I was like, okay, can you actually maintain like a half decent gym schedule? Because that was like it's such a big passion of mine, and it's just such a big priority on my like life goals that I was like, no, I need to actually know.
Yeah, there's no option.
I need to know if I'm going to be able to make this work. So my schedule, I'd say I'm on like most of the time I'm on 3 to 4 day pairing. So I'll be paired up with the same crew for 3 to 4 days at a time. So during those days, I actually have a running list now for all of our layover locations and like which ones have my gym, because I'm a member of the gym, like a Good Life Gym, which is like throughout all of Canada. So I actually have a list of where all of the Good Lives are nearby our layovers, or if there's not one that's nearby, I have a note as to whether or not the hotel gym is absolute garbage or if I can go and use it or whatever. So thankfully, I've been able to maintain somewhat of a schedule. In the last month or so, straight up honest, I've been struggling big time with my motivation, but you're actually catching me back up on like an uphill climb at this point. Right. So I'm getting back.
Well, that's good. Maybe this will inspire you to, be reminded that that's a really rare opportunity that you have this national gym, for lack of a better term, that's across Canada.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. I mean, we have Golds and LA Fitness and stuff, Planet Fitness or whatever. I mean, they have these chains and franchises, but to have it where you can travel and then where they are, that's a whole different level, Emily. I think you're kind of up there with that.
It's doable. So, okay, to get back to your main question, is that it's challenging, not gonna lie, when you've been flying all day. Like we sometimes do days that are 4 to 5 leg days. When you've done all those days, you've been up since 3 a.m, like the last thing you feel like doing is, going to the gym, right? I'll be straight up honest, but it is doable. It's absolutely doable.
When you said 4 to 5 leg days, I actually thought you meant like leg days, like doing squats.
Oh my gosh.
I'm like, holy shit, how can she even walk? I don't even know how you can operate the pedals. But so all right, so fitness, I mean, that's interesting, but everyone knows that half of, or maybe even more than half, 80% of fitness is of course diet. So do you meal prep? How does that work? Do you go out for
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. I take the day or afternoon, it doesn't take me that long, but like the afternoon or evening prior to like when I leave for my 3-4 day pairing, I'll just cook up a bunch of stuff and then have it for like the rest of the time with me. And they give us, like with our crew bags and everything, they give us a lunch bag. And surprisingly, I've been able to fit the food for like almost 5 days.
Yeah, that's perfect
in there. So yeah, it's totally doable.
That's perfect. It seems to me there's a lot of that pairing between being a pilot and being in shape, whether it's a guy or a girl. And there's a lot of influencers out there, I'm sure you're familiar with them, who kind of run this whole brand, this whole image of doing that, staying fit, but also flying planes. And you're definitely one to be doing that yourself, it looks like. So congratulations on maintaining that. That's really, really admirable. And it's really tough. Most people can't even stay in shape, staying in the same spot on Earth for more than, a month. And you're traveling every single day, virtually all the time. So that's really impressive. And
thank you.
I'd also like to know more a little bit about, what your long-term goal is, because you mentioned that wasn't really your long-term goal originally to be an airline pilot. So do you have anything in mind, or just kind of flying, by the seat of your pants, so to speak, and you'll see where it ends up?
Yeah, it's a good question. Like you said, I didn't really know if I wanted to get into the airlines at the beginning, just because I wasn't really sure if I wanted to have that kind of lifestyle, kind of being away from home. Now that I'm in it, I've been a first officer here with this company for just over a year now, and I'm enjoying it. I definitely enjoy like the travel benefits and the travel hookups that you get with it. But I think I also really am enjoying the teaching aspect. So I actually also teach initial pilots that are going through the training program.
Cool.
And I'm teaching them in a simulator.
Wow.
In their first couple. Yeah. So just not the full motion sim. There's a simulator prior to that. We call it the GFS. Some people call it IPT. It's graphical flight simulation or simulator, excuse me, and then or IPT is instrument procedure trainer, I believe.
Right.
So it's just like the initial checklist, like all the flows and like the standard operating procedures, so that when they do get to the simulator, the full motion one, that stuff is a little bit more familiar, and they're able to focus on the actual handling and flying of the aircraft. So I actually find the training and the teaching super rewarding. You get to learn so much stuff, because like the questions that they come up with, you haven't even thought about sometimes for yourself. So it keeps you sharp on your toes. It puts me, I feel like it keeps you humble too. Like, it's like, yeah, there's so much shit to learn out there. I feel like once you become a pilot, it's really just a license to learn, right? Yeah. So I feel like it's super rewarding. People are super positive and they're like stoked to be there. Like they're just like a kid in a candy store, right? For like a lot of these people.
That's the way I am with these interviews. I feel like I'm a kid in a candy store, because everyone's just so full of information, and I'm just sitting here like trying to absorb it. Like, wow, that's really impressive. By the way, while you were talking to me, I pulled up the simulator because I saw it in your Instagram. It's actually the latest picture, and it says the graphical flight simulator. And it reminds me of a meme that we actually posted on ETC memes of the Embry-Riddle nerds, and somebody would have that, and they'd be like the perpetual virgin in their mom's basement or something. I shouldn't really.
Right?
Yeah. I'm actually in a basement right now. Where I'm currently having a studio like renovated, like a recording studio, and so I'm in a basement right now, so I shouldn't be talking. But that simulator looks incredible, and all those screens are all LCDs. Is that what that is?
Yeah, they're all touch screens. So they interact. So obviously they're not like the switches that you would have in the actual simulator and in the aircraft, but it's close enough to get the feeling of your flows, go through the checklist, go through the procedures. You can still do full like takeoffs and landings. Obviously you don't see what's outside. You're only seeing like what the digital screens are in front of you. But like you said, like super, super handy, incredible tool for learning. So I do find the teaching, and eventually I get into the full sim. But I do find the teaching very rewarding. So who knows? Like, I'm sure that once I upgrade, I'll go into the full simulator, and then see kind of what I feel like doing from there.
Right. Take it from there, So always maintaining like that kind of loose goal where you kind of know what you like and what you want to do, but leave the doors open if they may, if they need to be open.
Exactly.
So,
because things change all the time, and it's nice to be able to know like, hey, I'm still enjoying this. Okay, cool. I'll keep doing it. The moment that you start to feel some negativity, or not even negativity, but you just feel like your priorities aren't lined up, I think that's the time when you can realign or, create new goals for yourself.
There's 3 things of this picture I noticed, by the way, while you're talking.
What's
okay,
that?
Number 1 is, well, first of all, your pose is incredible. You look amazing.
Thank you.
Number 2 is, are those chairs as comfortable as they look? Because they look really comfortable.
They're made to be able to, so that you can just focus on the flying. So yeah, they're kind of comfy.
Right. They're kind of like those neutral chairs. And then third, you have your branding. It says Pilot Emily right on the pedestal, like the console there.
That's right. It's my simulator. No, I'm just kidding.
That is actually really cool because it's so subtle and it was so well thought out. I didn't even notice it until I was studying this picture, and I'm like, wait a minute.
Yep. Yeah. Do you know why? It's because people have been stealing my stuff, right? People have been.
Yeah, well, I know.
More than anybody. Yeah.
Well, I think we probably stolen stuff too. And admittedly, it wasn't all our fault. See, what happens is people take stuff and then they send it to us without the watermarks, and then we repost it. And you get like these, angry people with pitchforks knocking down our DMs like, hey, man, take it down. And usually if I see it, I'm going to help them out. But it's like the Wild West out there with this stuff,
It is. It is. That's why I started doing it, because people were like making fake profiles. I actually keep getting people who are sending me DMs who are just mentioning like, hey, is this you on Coffee Meets Bagel, or is this you on some kind of dating app? Because I guess people are using my pictures to like create dating apps. Yeah.
Somebody stole my picture and used it on Grindr, so I understand. I mean, whatever. As long as they're not hurting anybody, it's just one of those things. I've probably been seen naked too many times on Grindr. I don't even know about it.
Exactly.
By the way, you could probably get yourself verified, though. Like, if you actually have people really, really, I think, harassing you in the way of maintaining false profiles, there should be a way you can get that blue check mark, in which case, I'd be even cooler. You really should have one. It would totally fit.
Hopefully. Yeah. I'll see what it takes to get there, but it'll come in good time, I'm sure.
I don't know. Knowing me, we're a meme page, so we got about, I think it's 100 trillion followers to go before we're allowed to get a check mark on Instagram.
Oh, is that so?
We'll see what happens. I'm not really sure how that works. There's no science behind that. Now, do you have any sectional chart clothing or not?
No, not yet.
All right, I'm going to have to send you some after this interview, I think. or at least give you a discount on it, because I think it would be really cool. And you really, really look the part, and you act the part, and you certainly speak the part as somebody who's very intelligent and very well informed with the industry. So I'm very happy to have you on the show, and I've learned a lot so far just talking to somebody who is sort of that generation and of that sector of the industry that's really making it big on this Instagram thing. Do you have any plans to make it on YouTube too?
Yeah, actually, if you go back onto my profile, I just launched my first video when I got to 30,000. That was like my goal initially. It was really just more sort of like motivate myself and have some kind of like tangible thing to work towards. And I just yes, I just released or launched my first video on my channel just under Pilot Emily as well. And my goal is to eventually just pick it up from there and actually film like in like flight deck videos. And I just ordered what's it called?
Those GoPros?
No, I have a GoPro. It's for to be able to listen into your ATC.
The audio, the audio
recorder. Recorder. Yeah.
Yep.
So I just ordered that to be able to take it to the next level, because if you ever like try to film anything in the cockpit, it's especially because we're a turboprop, like it's just so loud you can't hear anything. So it'll be really cool to be able to just show like followers kind of like a little bit of a sneak peek into just like what we see when we're out there, what we're dealing with, the kind of weather that, can be thrown our way.
For sure.
So I'm just hoping to kind of bring it up from there. I've got a Patreon page up as well, just for extra support if anybody wants to help me out with.
For sure. What is the URL for that, if you have it, or the name? Because so you can shout it out.
Pilot Emily as well. Yeah, Pilot Emily. For both for Patreon and YouTube. And I'm just really enjoying the process so far. And the YouTube obviously is something that's brand new for me. So I've had a friend who's helping me out with some of the editing, but I really want to be able to eventually take it all on my own and just kind of make something of it. Yeah.
Congratulations on that. Yeah, I would like to get into video myself. I have just way too many cameras and lights and microphones and everything. I mean, before I got into the aviation satire industry, I guess you could call it, I was really into music and recording and pretty much any type of entertainment you could imagine. And I have so much stuff. Like I'm looking over right now in the corner and there's just like a pile of stuff. My cats are, on top of it actually. But, and these are things that I'm passionate about. And like you say, to make it worthwhile for a viewer to see that and to experience the audio and the weather and just being there. And like maybe even the frustration of like, we're hitting turbulence again, whatever.
Just like you said, it's kind of cool to be able to look back at your journey as well. Like it's without you realizing, like all those videos, even if you're just doing like one a month, you can look back and see how you've progressed, not only in like your flying industry, but also just like your editing skills, like what you mentioned with like the music and the filming and all that. So definitely looking forward to that challenge.
Yeah, in the beginning of ATC Memes, we were doing a lot of the audio skits, and it was quite literally me sitting in my living room in my underwear with a really crappy Plantronics headset, and I was trying to simulate ATC conversations, and it was okay. And then fast forward 3 years, and it's like, I brought all my equipment from upstate New York down here to Long Island, and I have, like, I'm talking to you on, AKG microphones, and it's gotten way out of control. And people are like, no matter what you do, if you take the craft seriously, people will notice it. I'm a big believer in that,
Absolutely. It's crazy that you say that, because I think consistency and like quality of the product is really going to speak for itself. So it's one thing to put out, like you were saying at the beginning, you're kind of trying it out and probably doing it like on a daily basis. Whereas when you start to actually put in the effort and the time and produce something worthwhile, I think people start to, like you said, turn around and look at it and actually take time to pay more attention. So good job on you for fitting.
No, I appreciate that. And this podcast, I want it to be the same way. When I have, my partners and I were working on ATC Memes, we were under the impression at first, especially when we monetized it by selling some, apparel products and things like that, people all thought that we were kind of crazy to suspect that we thought we were going to make any money doing that. But my goal was always, if you make the product that is really the product's entertainment, if you keep people coming back and sharing things and really curious, they will always be a fan. And you do that with your page. So don't lose sight of the fact that you have something unique. It could be as simple as a story that you have from that day, but you have it, and that's your story, and go share it, So if you do it on YouTube, congratulations. You just made a new fan. I'm always going to be a fan of Pilot Emily. So
thank you so much.
thank you. Well, I guess that's just about it. I wanted to kind of get to know the person behind the name Pilot Emily on Instagram, and it's been a pleasure talking to you about a little bit of your journey flying the Canadian Dash 8 driver. And I didn't mention this, by the way, but you have a little bit of an accent. Not too bad, though, but a little tiny bit. I don't know.
It comes from, I swear to God, it comes from, well, not only just being in Canada, but I think it's like the mix. People have said that about the French Canadian side. They keep saying like, oh, do you speak French? But they'll only pick it up after they've been talking to me for like, you know, a couple minutes or whatever. I don't know if it's because of my parents, because we speak French at home. Yeah. So I am totally guilty of having an accent.
My brother is dating a girl from New Caledonia, which is, I believe, off the coast of New Zealand, but they're a French territory. And so I've mentioned this a few times. She speaks fluent French, and they've actually gone to Montreal and things. And every time he goes there, it's like a whole new experience because I've been there. I've never been with people who speak French, nor do I speak French. So to have somebody sort of being able to speak French in Quebec seems to be a requirement to know the whole city.
So yes, absolutely. It's such a nice place. Like Montreal, yes, Quebec City, even more so. So if you ever get a chance to visit, I'd highly recommend it.
I will have to. I grew up in Albany, New York, so I've been up to Montreal a bunch of times, not too far, but I've never been as far north as Quebec City, so I'll have to make it up there one of these days. And if I do, I'll fly on a Dash 8, and hopefully you'll be my pilot.
Yes, you're probably gonna. That's probably gonna be the only way you can make it there. So you'll be stuck.
That'll be my first YouTube video: flying a Dash 8 into the frigid Arctic Quebec air, or something.
Right. And make sure you film the landing because we're known for those.
In a good way or a bad way?
Shitty way. We call them crash dates, you know.
It's all right. As long as I can survive it and the plane can be reused again, that's a bonus point, you know.
Absolutely.
So, well, Emily, thanks so much for joining me, LO, here on the Aviation Lowdown. Is there any final words you want to share to my guests, or not really? It's fine.
Nah, just keep being awesome.
Well, I have a long way to go if I want to be awesome, but you're highly inspiring. So, Emily, thanks so much. I hope you have a great night, and I really do appreciate you being on, I guess it's episode 5 of the Aviation Lowdown.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. No problem. Well, guys, that just about wraps it up for episode 5 of the Aviation Lowdown. I'm your host, LO, and this has been Pilot Emily here on episode 5. If you guys would like to check out her social media pages, I highly recommend Instagram, Pilot Emily, YouTube, Pilot Emily, and her Patreon page, which is, not surprisingly, Pilot Emily. For those of you who'd like to send me some fan mail and hate mail, it's lo@aviationlowdown.com. Join us next week. You never know who we might have here on the Aviation Lowdown. Thanks a lot, guys. Good night.